Hello everybody, welcome to more Political Excess. Today let's do another deep dive into a midterm Senate election. Let's take a look at Kentucky. I do realize it's not expected to be really close. Let's start on Ballotpedia and get some background about this race. The current senator is Republican Rand Paul, and he is running for re-election to a third term. 6 years ago, when he last ran and won re-election, he won by about 14.5 points. His opponent on the Democratic side is Charles Booker. Booker is a former state representative, and he was the runner-up in the Democratic primary just 2 years ago, losing by only a few points to Amy McGrath. So let's take a look at their primaries. Booker won with 73% of the vote, not much of a challenge for him there, and Rand Paul, he won with 86% of the vote. He had very little actual competition. And if you want to compare raw vote totals in the primaries, the Democrats got almost 289,000 votes. Republicans got 380,000. So nothing really notable about that. It's a redder state. Republicans had more votes in the primary, and the primaries were largely uncontested. So let's go down here and take a look at any campaign finance. And as expected, Rand Paul has a lot more than Charles Booker. Booker doesn't have nothing. He has raised some money. I think even if he raised a lot more than he had, he's still going to be really outnumbered, given the fact that it is Rand Paul and it's Kentucky. So let's go down and see how this race is rated. All three sites, Cook Political Report, Inside Elections, and Larry Sabato, they all have it at safe or solid Republican. That is my rating as well. I think this should be easily over a 10-point margin for Rand Paul. Charles Booker is regarded as the more progressive, farther left candidate. 2 years ago, he did nearly lose to the more moderate candidate, Amy McGrath, who herself went on to lose heavily to Mitch McConnell. So now it's Charles Booker's turn. I think he's going to be regarded as too fringe, too much of an activist. Certain economic messages would be popular, but his candidacy overall, I think, would be better suited for a blue city or a blue congressional district. So let's go down farther and see how the counties have voted on a presidential level. And this shows us that over 74% of the population lives in 116 counties that are solid Republican. And that is defined on here as having voted for the Republican in the last 3 presidential cycles. On the other end, 24.5% of the population lives in just 2 counties that voted for the Democrat in the last 3 presidential cycles. And there's another couple counties trending toward the Republicans. Those voted for the Republican in the last 2 presidential cycles. So on a macro county level for president, Kentucky is basically politically already sorted out. So let's go down here and take a look at some of these counties. Most of these do look very deep red. The shading just indicates if they voted for the Democrat or the Republican for president in the last 1, 2, or 3 cycles. But it doesn't tell you anything about the margins. If you hover over any of these counties, you'll be able to see what the margins were in the last 3 elections. So as you can see, many of these counties voted for Donald Trump last time by very wide margins, easily over 60%, but there's plenty over 70, even some of them over 80%. The Democrats, their strength is in the most populous county, which is Jefferson, that has Louisville, and they voted for Biden with 59% of the vote to Donald Trump's 39%. Fayette County, that's another one that voted for Biden, and it's roughly around the same margin. So the Democrats are greatly outnumbered in Kentucky. It has shifted much to the right over the past 10 to 15 years. So let's move on to YouTube and see what they've got in their channels. Now, Rand Paul, he has a lot of different channels. I don't like having to look through 6 or 7 channels, but here's his channel with the most recent stuff that is separate from what he's doing on the Senate floor. And there's actually not much on here. There is one ad from last month. But from what I understand, he does have other ads. He's posted them on Twitter. But for whatever reason, they're just not on a YouTube channel that I could find. So that is disappointing. If we go over to Charles Booker's channel, he's got a few ads on here. Not a whole lot. But you can look at this stuff here if you'd like. All the links will be below in the description. We can also look at their official campaign websites. Here's Rand Paul's. If you want to see where he stands on the issues, maybe you want to pick up some Rand Paul merchandise. Well, you could do that right here. And here's Charles Booker's channel. You can see where he stands on the issues. And maybe you want to donate to Charles Booker. You can do that right here. So how about any debates? Well, 6 years ago, Rand Paul did debate. But so far this cycle, I'm seeing that he has not debated and skipped out on this debate, actually. So it says here Paul won't debate someone who advocated for violence the way he claims Booker has. As I always say about debates, I think excuses are completely flimsy. The voters deserve to see you go toe-to-toe with your opposition. If Booker is so extreme, then Rand Paul should expose that. He knows he has a lead. He doesn't want to give Booker any more of a platform than he has, and I think that's a shame. I think debates should happen, full stop. So let's hope one does happen eventually, but as of now, there is nothing. So let's switch over to Wikipedia here, and we can take a look at their endorsements. Rand Paul, he has a few here. Charles Booker, he has a bunch more, actually. And how about down here? There is one poll, but it's very outdated. It's from back in January, but it did have Rand Paul up 55 to 39. Maybe a new one drops right after I make this video, but that is really unacceptable that nobody has polled this race in almost 10 months. We can compare these poll results to how they stacked up to 6 years ago, and in that race, Rand Paul won with over 57% of the vote. Jim Gray had a little under 43%, and there's not a lot of polls because even back then, this was not expected to be competitive. SurveyMonkey, if you care about their polls, they put them all out at the end. They definitely underestimated Rand Paul by 5 to 6 points, and they overestimated Jim Gray by 2 to 3 points. Other than that, there's not that many polls for this race. So in conclusion, Rand Paul is going to win. I would guess it would probably be around 15 to 18 points. I think Charles Booker is not really suited well for Kentucky. Rand Paul has very high name recognition. Of course, everybody knows his dad. And as I said earlier, some of Booker's economic policies would resonate in some of these redder areas, but if you factor in the social stuff, that's where it's not going to work really at all. It's just like in some of these blue states, if you're running as a Republican, some of the more conservative social policies, that's enough to doom your campaign. So unless something dramatic happens, Charles Booker is going to take a loss. Rand Paul is going to serve a third term. I believe he only said he wanted to serve 2 terms back when he first ran, so he's kind of backing out of that pledge. But I guess that's what they all end up doing anyway, and I don't think anyone in Kentucky is really going to care. So that's a more in-depth look at this Kentucky U.S. Senate race. Let me know down below, what do you think of this race? What do you think the margin is going to be? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.